One of the best parts of being a true fan of basketball and the art of the game is that there are so many different levels and avenues to watch and enjoy the sport. And with the way each player can put their unique flair and style on their game, you truly will never run out of options of who and what to watch. Whether you want to go to the WNBA and appreciate the elite level of separation a player like Arike Ogunbowale gets, or you enjoy street ball and like watching guys like Rob, Nesco, or Frank Nitti get active in a one-on-one, when you truly appreciate the sport, you can recognize the skill and value of players at all ages and levels. Unfortunately for many a basketball consumer, all of this ability to enjoy the game on multiple levels is removed by strictly watching the NBA. Because even though this is the pinnacle of the game in the world, there are so many legendary hoopers and ball players you miss out on by strictly focusing on the league. For myself, as a fellow guy who definitely did not make the NBA, I found that I've taken just as much inspiration and enjoyment from watching college and high school basketball players as the NBA. And so when I rake my brain to think about players that I would describe as quote-unquote legends, my brain automatically goes to a different set of players and criteria. Because while I understand and appreciate all the stats and accolades, guys, for me, it's not just what you've done in the league, even if you made it. But I'm talking about accolades outside of that. What was your game like? And most importantly, what have you contributed to the culture? So do not take this lightly when I say it, but when I think about a legend by that criteria, without a shadow of a doubt, unequivocally, a legend of the game is Jahvon Quinerly. And with him having announced that he's stepping away from the game of basketball earlier this week, I've decided to prepare a video talking about the real story, the triumphant story of Jelly JQ. So without further ado, let's take a trip back to that one year that the most annoying person you know won't shut up about, 2016. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the year itself, because as we all know, it was peak, the music, the vibes, it was great, my life hasn't gotten better since then, And in spite of all of my clowning and making fun of those types of people, as someone who was there for that time, it was peak. I'm not gonna lie. We did get that legendary XXL class and the most amazing NBA finals of all time. But as an angsty, out-of-shape 13-year-old looking to get clout from playing basketball in high school, all eyes were on hoops. And by God, what a time to be alive. Hindsight is 2020, and we can all act like we don't remember what was going on at this time. But first of all, tricky Trey Duval. If you don't know Trey Duval, I can't trust your opinion on hoops, was having a monster run in high school. He was snatching ankles, throwing no-look dimes, and if you were under that rim when he took off, welcome. It's your Kodak moment, brother. And over on the West Coast, Alonzo Ball was in his final year with Chino Hills, and they had burst onto the national scene, introducing us not only to the Ball family, but also temporarily ruining basketball for everyone for a summer. Because once people realized you could just throw a full court outlet pass after a bucket, it gave vindication to every horrible defender and cherry picker you could think of. And if you played basketball, you know what I'm talking about. And as far as my class goes, for as much as everyone likes to clown him now, oh, he was old, oh, he wasn't that good, Kyrie Walker and Julian Newman went triple platinum in the middle school streets in 2016. So with all of this amazing basketball content surrounding my young mind at this time, it's no wonder that I remember 2016 as a revolutionary year. But undoubtedly the most impactful thing to come out of this time wouldn't be the flashy windmills of Trey Duval or Kyrie, nor the stare-down ankle breakers and passes from Lonzo, but a single layup, a finger roll. One that would look a bit odd and unassuming to the average person, and to someone who's used to watching high-level NBA or NCAA basketball, you might even go as far as to say it looked dumb. But on August 22nd, 2016, Home Team Hoops posted footage of the Under Armour Elite 24 game where New York guard Isaiah Washington went head-to-head with Trey Duval, and on a fast break, he broke out a jelly, and the basketball world changed. Seemingly overnight, everybody and their mom was trying the jelly, and Jelly Fam had gone global, not only changing the way that people went about playing the game, but also inspiring various offshoots of Jam Fam, Unicorn Fam, and every hooper you knew, from the best to the worst, were all trying to get certified. But while Isaiah Washington was crowned as the king of the Jelly Fam and recognized as the face of the group, people quickly began to see that while he may have been at the top, his co-founder Jahvon Quinerly, aka Jelly JQ, may have been the best player from the start. See, unfortunately for Isaiah, and really the Northeast basketball scene as a whole, the New York public school and inner city basketball circuit is no longer as high level as it used to be, and pretty much every elite talent from the city leaves relatively quickly to go play more comp with more exposure at a boarding school somewhere else. So if you wanted to see real high-level high school basketball players from New York in the Northeast, at this time, everyone knew you had to go to Jersey. And if you watched closely, it was clear that JQ was the heir to the throne. At this time, another Jersey powerhouse, Roselle Catholic, was in the midst of a dominant run, with five-star forwards Naz Reid and Khalil Whitney holding down the fort. But as far as guards went, JQ was at the top of the totem pole in Jersey. His game wasn't only smooth, but enjoyable to watch, and it spoke to the essence of what made Jelly so popular in the first place because it kept it accessible for the watcher and hooper that wasn't a freak athlete. For the guys who weren't 6'10 unicorns like his fellow Jelly fan member Naz Reid, or 5'11 lightning quick athletes like Jordan Walker, JQ, while still being an elite athlete, was also incredibly crafty and therefore much more accessible to the average hooper. He was able to use an elite handle along with great footwork and separation to get to his jumper, or some elite body control to contort for all manners of Jelly layups that just further served to push that brand forward and help bring the swag back to Northeast hoops. And by the time Isaiah had left high school and gone to college, it had become clear that Quinerly was the best guard in Jelly fam, according to the national ranking scene, as he was not only listed as a 5-star by every major ranking site, but also a back-to-back Gatorade Player of the Year for New Jersey in 2017 and 2018. Now I understand to the average non-Jersey/New York basketball watcher, what I've just described to you may not sound like an elite accolade. Oh, elite basketball player wins high-level awards, so what? And I get it. But you must understand me. JQ was in competition with real killers. Guys like Scotty Lewis, Brian Antoine, Naz Reid, Precious Achua, Louis King, Jalen Carey, and much more. This was a murderer's row of hoopers from a state that had 3 players selected to the All-American game. And Quinerly was given the title of King of Jersey twice. He was putting on a clinic whenever he stepped on the court, whether you want to talk about him putting up 37 on Cole Anthony and Malloy, or the matchups he had with his AAU team Sport U on the Under Armour circuit. Just know that JQ was stamped. But for all that headline-making success on high school basketball courts, AAU circuits, and All-American games, that's not what makes JQ a legend to me. Because if you really know ball, and you were there for the time, then you know that Dykeman JQ was a different animal entirely. Jahvon, like most any other basketball player in New York, has played at Dykeman numerous times, and each time there's just a pop in the crowd whenever he scores or gets the ball because they all know what time it is. But that Jelly Day performance. For a bit of context for those who don't know, Jelly Day was a day at Dykeman Park, a well-known street ball venue where all the members of the Jelly fam agreed to play on the same team. And even if I tried, I couldn't put into words what this meant for the city and a New York hoop scene that had been rapidly declining and losing recruits to out-of-state schools. Jahvon put on an absolute show, along with his teammates Jordan Walker and Naz Reid, and just looking at the visuals and the crowd, you can understand what he meant to the city, what the Jelly movement meant to New York and the national basketball scene. It's indescribable. Quinerly's elite high school play and impact on the hoop culture also got him one of the most coveted awards that a high school hooper could receive in the mid to late 2010s. And it wasn't another accolade like the Gatorade Player of the Years or the McDonald's All-American Game selection that he also would receive, but something more important, something iconic, an overtime challenge video. I've said it before and I'll continue to say it, but those overtime challenge videos were one of the realest and most valuable cosigns that a hooper could get at that point. Because the impact and reach that overtime had as a brand on high school hoopers meant that they trusted and valued you as a part of the culture. JQ was one of a select few players to get that video, and with all of this cultural cachet and hype from various hoop outlets, as well as the city of New York and New Jersey behind him, he was heading into college with a tremendous amount of hype behind him. But unfortunately, this is where a series of controversies in the dark underbelly of the college basketball world begins to rear its ugly head. His college basketball journey would begin in turmoil as he'd be implicated in a payment scandal for the University of Arizona, which caused him to have to flip his commitment to Villanova, where he'd face even more issues right away. Due to a series of factors that includes Villanova coach Jay Wright's hesitance to play freshmen, the five-star guard, who had spent the better part of the last 2 years with the city and culture hyping him up, suddenly was in an unfamiliar situation. He wasn't being valued. Throughout the 2018-19 season, JQ spent a large majority of it on the bench, rarely seeing any action and being treated essentially as an afterthought. And his frustration would boil over following a loss to Penn where he'd only play 1 minute, and in a momentary lapse of judgment, fueled by the anger of failed expectations and a perceived lack of belief from his coaches and teammates, Quinerly fired out a tweet that would plant a seed that haunted him for the rest of his collegiate career. He would post on his Instagram story that Villanova was his second choice for a reason, and following this, a media whirlwind would ensue, forcing him to apologize and permanently staining his reputation as a leader and player in the eyes of college basketball fans everywhere. After this underwhelming season, he'd unsurprisingly enter the transfer portal and settle on Alabama, and with head coach Nate Oates' style of pick-and-roll heavy guard play, JQ was set to make his return on the biggest stage in the 2019-20 season. But once again, politics would intervene, as Jahvon's immediate eligibility waiver to play at Bama would be denied, stemming from those same pay-to-play allegations that had forced him to waste a year at Villanova. This was devastating news for Quinerly, who was finding out that he'd not only been robbed of 1 year already by coaches and politics that blocked him from seeing the court, but now the power structure of the NCAA itself was reaching down to snatch away more time from him. Quinerly spoke to the New York Post about this time, where he said that he would lie awake at night and wonder how he ended up with 2 years being robbed from him when he had every offer and could have gone anywhere he wanted. It was a brutal situation. But within the tragedy, as we'll find as a theme with Quinerly, he found solace as any hooper would and worked in silence as everyone waited with bated breath for his true debut. So when the 2020-21 college season rolled around, Jahvon Quinerly finally introduced himself to the world properly, dropping 18 points and 3 assists in the season opener and putting Bama and the rest of the basketball world on notice that he was still here and he was eager to make up for lost time. JQ's high-level scoring would continue throughout the season, and while he would have some shaky performances and struggle at times to fit into Nate Oates' deep guard rotation, he would find a role as an elite sixth man and offensive spark plug for the Crimson Tide. He put 24 points on Ole Miss off the bench in his first ever SEC matchup, and he'd have multiple superstar level performances, including dropping 19 on Tennessee in the SEC tournament and putting 20 points on UCLA in the Sweet 16. Quinerly's first season at Bama saw him put the world on notice that he was still here, behind his stats of 12.9 points and 3.2 rebounds on 47.8% shooting from the field and 43% from three. All production that would improve in his 2021-22 season with Bama heading into the NCAA tournament. But once again, Quinerly would find himself being robbed of the ability to play the game he loved. And this time it wasn't the NCAA or the internal politics of a coach, but his own body. Just 4 minutes into Alabama's opening game in the 2022 tournament, Quinerly would tear his ACL, not only curtailing a deep tournament run for Bama, but also Quinerly's own plans to declare for the NBA draft. At this point, for the third time in 4 years, he found himself being robbed by the game that he had poured his everything to, giving late nights and early mornings to repeatedly. But once again, despite what any other regular person would do who'd been faced with obstacle after obstacle, rejection after rejection, JQ did what he'd always done and worked in silence. And somehow, it would once again yield fruit, with Quinerly miraculously making one of the quickest returns from an ACL tear we'd ever seen, returning to the court for the opening game of the 22-23 season, playing 4 minutes against South Alabama. Quinerly would exhibit a resilience and dedication to the game that was indicative of the city that he came from and the community he represented. A dedication we associate with other legendary players who have similarly had to work their way back from injury. And while he'd have some real struggles this season due to his knee and minute inconsistency, he still demonstrated a true love for a game that was slowly becoming apparent didn't love him back. And following the end of this season, he decided it was time for a change and transferred to Memphis for his final season of college basketball, where he'd face yet another betrayal. This time, coming from his former head coach Nate Oates, who threw shade at Quinerly by complimenting his replacement and fellow New Jersey product Aaron Estrada, saying that it would make them better not having to ask their point guard for effort every day. It's within this betrayal and the sentiment behind it that we can get to the root of a real issue within the entire structure of NCAA basketball and amateur sports in general. The idea that a coach is able to come out and question the effort of a player who sat through a redshirt season and worked through a torn ACL in record time speaks to the broken system of politics that is college basketball. And while Quinerly would finish out his career strong enough at Memphis with averages of 13.5 points, upon his announcement of his retirement from basketball earlier this month, he made a statement that deeply troubled me and inspired me to make this video. Because in that statement, where he thanked everyone who believed in him and supported him, he said, quote, "To the majority, I will always be remembered as a failure." And this remark not only troubled me and disturbed me, but above all else, it confused me. Because having heard his story in the way that I've laid it out for you here, how on earth could someone consider this a failure? A guy who helped lead a movement that changed the basketball world. A guy who helped bring his city together and revitalize a hoop culture. A guy who fought not only against the internal and external politics of the NCAA and shady NIL plans, but against his own body for the love of the game. A guy who embodied the essence of what it meant to be a student of the game and was willing to give everything to it, despite it becoming clear over and over and over again that the game didn't love him back. Of all the words that I'd use to describe that guy, fighter, dog, hooper, failure doesn't even enter my mind. The strength and resilience to walk away from something that had clearly become a politics-led, bastardized version of the game you once loved is the truest example of having a love for the game that one could exhibit. His retirement not only symbolizes an acceptance of his journey and the willingness to begin anew, but a true reverence for the sport. Aside from the shady politics that have ruined many a hooper that came before him and will continue to ruin many that come after him. So even if he feels like in walking away from the game, he's doing it because he doesn't have love for it anymore, to me, it's the ultimate sign of love and respect. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like, sub, and hopefully I see you in the next one.